Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Don Sturhan. Last name is spelled S-T-E-R-H-A-N. I'm the president of CR Builders, LLC. We're based in Billings, Montana. Our company is a developer of low-income housing tax credit projects. So we've been in the business since 2003, trying to offer development planning and financing for affordable housing projects across Montana. Not only Montana, but we're also in Wyoming, North Dakota, Colorado, South Dakota, even have some projects in Alaska. So we've had the opportunity to see a pretty wide footprint and also experience other policies and procedures that are in play in other states that are trying to achieve this same level of affordable housing. So that gives you a little perspective of where I'm coming from. I'm also a member of the Montana Housing Coalition. Many of our members are very interested in the outcome of this bill. I'm the vice chair of that organization, and I also had the privilege to serve on the governor's housing task force over the last 2 years. This bill happens to be one of the recommendations that came out of the task force, just so you're aware. Of course, there are a number of issues that were covered in the task force, but funding tools, financing strategies, that was part of the game plan, and this bill is an outgrowth of that effort. I'm trying to be respectful of your time because I know you have a busy day and there are other people that want to speak. So I'm going to hit this at a high level, and then if you have any details or you want to drill down into the details further, we can do that in Q&A. But the one thing I'd like to emphasize first is to let you know that this particular bill is actually the state version of the federal low-income housing tax credit. This bill is mirrored and modeled after the federal tax credit that was put in place in 1986 during the Reagan administration. So this model and this kind of financing strategy has been in play successfully for a number of years. About $15 billion in tax credit were sold last year in the United States.
Mr. Chair, there's kind of an audio feed issue happening.
I can hear that a little bit in the background.
I do.
If you possibly keep your cell phones away from Mike.
That cell phone causes me problems in more ways than one. Thank you. But again, back to the point, that the federal tax credit has been in play for a long time, about $15 billion last year. 80% of those tax credits are sold to banks. The other 20% are typically insurance companies or large corporations that anticipate a tax liability on an ongoing basis. So let me key in on that word, but they're sold to the banks or to the investors, because there's often some confusion about what exactly is a tax credit and how does that help us to fund housing. Oftentimes I find that people think the tax credit is going to me. We're the developer. Therefore, the tax credit is an incentive to us to reduce my tax liability so that I'm more receptive to building additional housing projects. No, that's not it at all. These tax credits are designed to be sold so that we can raise capital, which in turn is put into the project. So when we receive an award of tax credits, and let's just use the federal tax credit as an example. When we receive an award of the tax credits, my next job then is to turn to the marketplace and say, okay, I have tax credits. What will you pay me for them? Because I need a partner to help build my project, and I need some cash. So what will you pay me? So if I receive, let's take for an example, we have a $10 million project. The calculation on a 9% tax credit, which is the competitive tax credit that's available, by the way, the federal tax credit is awarded to Montana. It's a federal tax credit, but it's awarded to the state of Montana based on population. It's administered at the state level. Federal credit, but it's administered at the state level by the Montana Board of Housing. So they're making the decisions locally as to who's going to get the tax credits. So if I'm one of the fortunate recipients that say, okay, I got an award of tax credits, my project is $10 million, I now have $9 million in tax credits that I can sell. So the bank or the investor, they're not going to give me 100%. They're going to buy it at a discount so that they've got some spread too. But they'll give me maybe $7.8 million, maybe $7 million. So we negotiate that price. And then I sell the tax credits to them. They make a commitment to buy those tax credits and put that money up. Now, it takes 10 years. These tax credits do not come all at once. They come over a 10-year period. So what does that suggest? That suggests that these folks are going to be my partner for a long time. So they have a vested interest in the success of my project. So if they're going to give me $7 million, they want to know that I know what I'm doing, the underwriting is correct, that this project is going to be successful. That's why I always say this is a perfect example of a public-private partnership. And we hear that term a lot, and we always advocate for that. But really, where is there an example of how that works very effectively? This is a good example. Tax credits for 10 years, but the investor is in the deal for 15. So they're committed to this project. So you've got the private sector here working with the public sector. The public sector is offering a tax credit. The private sector is offering the capital. Private sector puts up that capital, that cash. I, in turn, take that cash and use that to build the building. Okay. So what it is it's a conversion. We convert the tax credit to cash. All right, now let's go back to my example of $10 million. This is where we start talking about the capital stack. Okay, I've got a $10 million objective here. That's what it cost me to build this affordable housing building for workforce. So how do I get there? Well, I've just got $7 million from my investor. I'm not there yet, though, am I? I still have $3 million that I need to raise. I've raised 70%. Huge benefit. That federal tax credit just provided me with 70% of the money I need. I still need 30, though. If I'm going to get it done, I still need another 30%. Where does that come from? I think Representative Brewster did a very nice job talking about that capital stack and how we put that together and the various sources that are available to us. A bank loan, maybe home funds, maybe grants, maybe the city has agreed to contribute the property. There are various ways to try to fill that 30%, but more and more in today's environment, that 30%, that's the gap that we keep talking about. So when you hear gap financing, this is a solution, this is a tool for gap financing. That's what we're talking about. How do we get this thing finished off so that we can get the project done?
Thank you, Mr. Sturhan. I have a question for you before we proceed. What proportion of your testimony are you through so far? Because I see a number of people lined up there, and I want to make sure everybody has an equal opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can tell, I'm a little passionate about this. So, what I'm trying to do is at least put a level of understanding in, and I'll wrap it up right now. That's the gap financing we're after. Previously, we've relied in Montana on federal programs. This is one request, one opportunity for us as a state to do something on a program level to contribute towards that filling that gap. It's not the total solution, but it helps, and it might very well be the component that makes the difference of whether a project is built or not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, committee members, thanks for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Kaya Peterson, K-A-I-A-P-E-T-E-R-S-O-N, and I am the Executive Director of NeighborWorks Montana. NeighborWorks Montana is a statewide organization working to advance opportunities for every Montanan to live in a stable home that they can afford and where they can thrive. Part of the work we do at NeighborWorks Montana is to provide financing for housing preservation and development, and we work closely with developers, lenders, investors, and other financial partners to fill gaps, like Don was talking about, in financing for housing development projects. Across the state, projects have gotten much more expensive as development costs have increased. And as a result, the financing stacks for these projects have become much more complex and complicated. Developers have to put together many sources of capital to bridge the gap between the cost of development and the rents that residents can afford to pay. Now, even if a project has federal tax credits, like Mr. Sturhan explained, they often have to bring at least 3 or more other sources of capital to the table, even to consider putting together a viable project. For example, the BATS building in Great Falls converted and upgraded a vacant historic building into 25 affordable apartments. In addition to the primary loan and investment of federal tax credits, the project used housing trust funds, ARPA, home, tax increment financing, program revenue from the nonprofit, and NeighborWorks Montana financing. Another example is Spruce Grove in Laurel and Joliet, which was an acquisition and rehab of 62 apartments for seniors. That project required tax credits, coal trust funds, ARPA, home, USDA rural development, and NeighborWorks Montana financing. Our partners are no longer able to work with just federal tax credits, and it is particularly difficult for small and rural projects to make development work. We need a lot of different tools, all working together to address our current housing needs. This state workforce housing tax credit would make more housing development possible. These tax credits fill gaps in equity and investment. They bring more private investment to projects and are a known and well-established financing mechanism. So NeighborWorks Montana supports HB21, and I really urge you to support this bill and the development of more affordable workforce housing in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
I don't have my cell phone on me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Carissa Trujillo, Karissa Trujillo, and I'm the Executive Director of Homeward, a statewide nonprofit housing developer with 35 properties in 14 communities across Montana. Over the years, Homeward has been privileged to develop a variety of housing that has directly benefited our local communities. This includes the Crowley Flats property, the adaptive reuse of a beautiful downtown building in Lewistown, Montana. Of the tax credit equity that we received, nearly 98% of $5 million was invested in Montana communities. Before leasing began at Crowley Flats, we had 60 people who reached out wanting to live in one of the 16 apartments, which illustrates the need we are facing throughout our state. Our newest tax credit award is a combined 4% and 9% tax credit project in partnership with Homefront, the Housing Authority of Billings. We are projected to invest nearly 92% of those project costs into Montana businesses, estimated to be over $36 million. This project will create 101 new homes at LB Lofts in the Billings Heights and preserve 30 critical senior homes at Laurel Gardens in Laurel. We are still solving for funding gaps, which would have been greatly helped by a state workforce housing tax credit. A state housing tax credit will allow for more projects like these to be made possible and allow us to also maximize on the existing funds to create more homes for our fellow Montanans. Montana only receives the minimum of the federal tax credits from the federal government, so we are restricted right now in the number of homes that we can create with those limited funds. Additionally, over the past few years, the costs to develop have continued to increase, and with that market reality and those federal minimums, we will continue to see fewer and fewer homes built with just that one federal tax credit tool. It's not news to anyone in the room that we have a substantial shortage of housing in Montana. Adding an additional tool to create these homes will benefit our community members, your constituents, and our economy. This state workforce housing tax credit would leverage private capital. Let me try. I swear I don't have my cell phone on me. It would allow us to leverage private capital and allow us as developers to raise equity through investors who buy those credits. That would make it possible to finance our projects. This reduces the reliance on public funding alone. The money then goes directly into our local economy, paying contractors, subcontractors, architects, and all of the folks that help us build these properties. In practical terms, this bill will directly translate into the creation of more homes, more jobs, and more opportunities for Montanans. That's why I'm here today in support of House Bill 21 and the proposed state-funded workforce housing tax credit. If passed, this bill would provide Homeward and other Montana developers with the critical funding necessary to expand our housing development efforts. It's awful, I'm sorry. And reach more Montanans who need homes. We are committed to creating communities of opportunity and stability. I appreciate the committee's thoughtful consideration of this important issue and urge you to support House Bill 21. The future of our communities depends on it, and Homeward stands ready to partner with you all to make this vision a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. I should have said earlier, I ask people to please refrain from repeating what previous testimony has already said. And if you have any handouts or something, you please distribute them. And if you have written handouts, written speech, please do not read your speech. We want to hear what you have to say. Okay? So if you have something that's written down that you'd like to share with the committee, don't read it verbatim. Please hand it out. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Fielder and committee members. My name is Becky Brandborg. That's spelled B-E-K-I. Brandborg, B-R-A-N-D-B-O-R-G. I am the chair of the Montana Housing Coalition and a private affordable developer.
Mr. Chair, the audio feed is getting really bad. Perhaps I would suggest maybe we could take a recess to allow Olis to come down here and examine the issue.
I don't think we're going to take a recess right now. It seems like there was a lot of people already standing in line.
I understand.
Mr. Chair, it may just be someone sitting near the south.
I don't know what affects it. I think whatever somebody did seems to have turned it off, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm here to provide you with examples of the types of homes and the people that will be positively impacted by HB21. Thank you in advance for your time. My partner in GL Development and I purchased and brought up to date a U.S. Department of Agriculture rural development apartment complex located in both Culbertson and Wolf Point in 2020. The one I'll focus on is in Culbertson, which is located on the High Line, Highway 2, 47 miles south of Plentywood. But we've done the exact same kind of work with homes in the towns of Hamilton and Havre. With the Board of Housing Tax Credit Award, we took an 8-unit apartment building that was built in 1983 back to the future and preserved it as subsidized apartments. As anything that old would be, quite a bit of updating and general improvements were needed. We replaced the windows, doors, floors, HVAC systems, kitchen, and bathrooms, along with significant additional insulation. Rural development properties exist exclusively in small towns across the country. Almost all of them were built in the 70s and 80s. With the low-income housing tax credit, we continue the subsidy to the residents who are the working poor. I spoke with the site manager yesterday to review where our residents work, and the answer is at a hairdresser's, as cooks and dishwashers at a restaurant, at the grocery store, as a clerk in a small general store, and as mechanics and school janitors. Wolf Point, 54 miles west of Culbertson, the residents there work at the hotels, McDonald's, the casino, Albertson's grocery store, and for Town Pump. These are all...
Interrupt you, please. We don't name specific businesses or proper names for things like that. We can just say grocery stores. We don't have to identify the names of the grocery stores, too.
Thank you,
I ask
Chair.
everybody to please stay on the focus of this bill.
Okay, thank you. So these are all obviously low-paying jobs. USDA Rural Development pays a portion of their rents to encourage the presence of essential affordable housing for such people and in these little towns. It allows the tenants to pay a rent of no more than 30% of their income towards both rent and their utilities. As examples, for a $650 one-bedroom apartment, the hairdresser pays $266 and RD picks up $439. One of the farm employees and his wife pay $300 and RD provides $425 for a two-bedroom home. The highest paying resident pays $598. Almost lastly, we don't, and we won't in the future, ever exclusively rely on tax credits to make these projects feasible. In the case of Culbertson, the Great Northern Development Corporation also garnered a grant from the Department of Commerce Home Program of $840,000 for this project. And lastly, GL Development commits and signs formal deed restriction contracts to keeping these homes in Culbertson and Wolf Point in very good condition and affordable for 40 years with USDA Rural Development and for 47 years with the State Department of Commerce. We will honor that commitment. Please support HB21 so projects like this one can be replicated and more working households can have a decent place to live in rural Montana communities like Culbertson. Thank you so much, Chair and committee members.
Thank you, Ms. Brandcourt.
Good morning, Chair Fiedler and committee members. I'm Michael O'Neill, spelled capital O, apostrophe, capital N-E-I-L. I'm the Executive Director of the Helena Housing Authority, and along with your representatives from Helena, I'd like to welcome you all to our beautiful city, and we hope you enjoy your time with us this year. I'm here today in my capacity as an officer of the Montana Housing Coalition, and I'm here to express my strong support for HB21, which I think is a critical solution to one of the biggest challenges facing our state, the supply of affordable homes for all Montanans. I'm here to just let you know that there are several economic benefits from this well-structured bill, and the economic impact of a state low-income housing tax credit in Montana was studied back in December 2022 by the Bureau of Business and Economic Research at the University of Montana, and we can make that report available to you. It's available on their website. It's called an assessment of the potential impacts of a Montana low-income housing tax credit. Please consider the following. For every dollar in lost revenue to the tax credit, a state credit program is estimated to leverage $2.69 in direct public and private residential investment spending in the broader state economy. This is a very conservative estimate of direct economic impact. I think you all see these economic impact studies. This is just the direct impact. Keep in mind the significant indirect economic impact long-term is not calculated in this amount and is multiples greater than the 2.69 return. A state-level housing tax credit program could increase overall unit produced across the state by over 40%. Roughly about 122 more affordable units built every year, above what the federal tax credit currently creates here in Montana. Over 6 years, this results in 730 additional affordable rental units. These additional units would be expected to increase Montana's number of units accepting the federal housing choice vouchers by 124 units, resulting in an additional $38 million in federal voucher expenditures in the state over 10 years. The addition of a state-level program is expected to particularly spur affordable housing development driven by the state tax credit in areas of the state that have historically not seen much affordable housing development. It is important to increase the geographic distribution of these resources across the state to ensure communities of all shapes and sizes in Montana are included. The expected net positive impacts from the additional economic impact activity stimulated by expanded affordable housing development in the state would reduce the net annual average fiscal impact to roughly $3.88 million. A state workforce housing tax credit is expected to increase the utilization of federal 4% credits by roughly $96 million, and total residential investment spending by $143 million. This is bringing federal dollars home to Montana to build more housing here, making sure Montana and Montanans and Montana communities get our fair share of federal resources. This bill will help more Montana workers and working families, veterans, seniors, and elderly, and persons with permanent serious disabilities obtain affordable homes that they can afford. And we can do so in a fiscally prudent way. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of this legislation. State low-income housing tax credits are a model used in 32 other states, and I urge a do pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
Good morning, Chair Fielder, Committee. My name is Aubrey Godbey, spelled A-U-B-R-E-Y, Godbey, G-O-D-B-E-Y, and I'm here representing the Montana Budget and Policy Center. I'm going to be speaking less on the bill today and more about the need for affordable housing in Montana. We rise in support of HB21. We all know Montana is experiencing a housing shortage, both in availability and affordability. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, there are only 42 affordable and available housing rental units per 100 households in Montana. Montana would need to add 16,629 rental homes to its housing market to make up for this current shortage. With permission from the chair, I would like to hand out a rental affordability report that was published this year by Montana Budget and Policy Center.
Okay, you may hand them down both sides of the aisle, both aisles.
So in this report, I want to point out many graphics to help you visualize those affected by the housing shortage in Montana. First, on page 1, the graphic describes the percentage of Montanans who are severely cost burdened by the cost of their rent, meaning they spend more than 50% of their income on housing. Second, there's another graph describing careers where wages are often not able to keep up with the cost of housing in Montana. And lastly, there is a map of the counties in Montana showing how many hours would need to be worked per week on minimum wage to afford a fair market 2-bedroom. Senior citizens and those with disabilities often face a greater burden with the cost of housing. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, rent affordable to a Social Security income recipient would be $274 a month. A state workforce housing tax credit program will help the state leverage a greater amount of federal funds to expand access to affordable housing. A good example of someone who would be able to utilize these funds is a family of 4 with an income of $54,120 yearly. As you've already heard from many people who have spoke before, this proposal has garnered bipartisan support from this committee in past legislative sessions, and it passed through the House with strong support in 2021. One study has shown that had this proposal passed in 2019 and had been implemented, Montana could have leveraged federal resources to develop a cumulative 1,350 units in Montana by the end of 2024 and another cumulative 2,250 units by the end of 2026. An adequate supply of affordable rental homes is not only essential for the health of Montanans, the injection of federal funds has a rippling effect in local communities. Because of all these reasons and what you have heard before, we support and urge your vote yes on HB 21.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sharon Haugen, S-H-A-R-O-N-H-A-U-G-E-N, and I'm here today to testify on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Montana. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everybody is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, litigation at the local, state, and national levels. The League of Women Voters supports the House Bill 21 to establish a workforce housing tax credit. The League agrees with what has been said in support of this bill. We support current efforts to increase the availability of safe, decent, and affordable housing for moderate and low-income households. Having adequate and secure housing enables citizens to fully participate in their community as informed voters and participants in the democracy. We urge passage of this bill. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
Good morning, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Kerry Hegreberg. It's Hegreberg. I'm here today representing the Montana Chamber of Commerce. Our CEO, Todd O'Hare, was unable to be here today, but he was on the governor's housing task force. He asked me to convey his regrets that he's not with you today. The Chamber strongly supports this bill. The Chamber has heard from smallest businesses around the state to the largest corporations and employers that housing for their employees is a critical problem. They are having extreme difficulties recruiting employees, retaining employees. It's happening in the smallest towns. It's happening in the biggest cities. And it is a critical problem. And we see this bill as a partial solution. You've heard from many of the proponents the details of how it works, but we wanted to convey the strong support of the business community throughout Montana. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Sam Sill. It's SILL. Here on behalf of the Montana Bankers Association, I wanted to thank Representative Brewster for bringing this bill forward. The bankers have historically supported these tax credit bills. I think Mr. Hagberger kind of already told you why. We have many business customers that are struggling filling their workforce needs. The shortage of affordable housing is a component of that, so we think that's going to help with economic development and the health of our business community. So we strongly support this bill. I used to represent, in I guess a previous career, real estate developers. One thing I've learned being involved in the affordable housing discussions is, there isn't any one solution. It's kind of a two-pronged approach. You do regulatory reform, so you make subdivision easier and zoning easier and those kind of things to lower the cost of development on the one side. But then for many of, I think was what folks that were earlier characterized as the working poor, the cost of building is significant enough now, high enough now that without some degree of support, you probably can't build housing that those folks are going to be able to afford. So that's where public investment like this tax credit bill comes in. So we'd urge you to support this. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think I'm already late for a hearing in state admin. If you'd let me go, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. You're free to leave. Question? Excuse me, sir. Before you do leave, does the committee have any questions for the last proponent? Seeing no questions, you may leave. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kevin Wade, W-A-D-E. I'm here on behalf of the Montana Contractors Association, and we have a lot of members from all across Montana who have to go to different locations in Montana to do projects. And for previously stated reasons, we ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Daniel Cox. I represent the Montana Association of Realtors, and I would just echo what has been previously said. We are supportive of House Bill 21 and look forward to helping.
Thank you, sir. Would you please spell your last name?
C-O-X.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jake Brown, B-R-O-W-N, here today representing Shelter Whitefish, a housing advocacy organization, also a member of the Governor's Housing Task Force. We, too, would just like to lend our support to House Bill 21. Our support's pretty simple. This bill is going to help us increase the supply of housing, and that's something I think we can all hopefully agree that our state needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Andrea Davis, last name Davis. I have the honor of serving as the mayor of Missoula, Montana, and one of the most significant reasons that I was elected into this position is because I bring a 2-decade career of creating homes that Montanans can afford. You have heard a very diverse set of rationale, reasons, and need for why House Bill 21 makes sense for Montana. I'd like to speak specifically about the efforts that we're making in Missoula and, of course, why that matters to the rest of Montana as well. So we've heard today that regulation alone will not achieve the needs we have for creating affordable homes for Montanans at all levels. And we need, quite frankly, we need additional capital to make these projects work. The way I like to think about affordable homes for Missoulians and Montanans is that it is housing infrastructure. Just like our roads, our sidewalks, just like our sewer and our water, homes that Missoulians can afford and that Montanans can afford, that our workforce can afford, is our housing infrastructure. It is an investment in our residents. In Missoula, we have had a housing policy in place since 2019. We identified both our land use and our development codes as an opportunity for improvement to increase more attainable and affordable housing. We have achieved that. In fact, we are in compliance with Senate Bill 382, which was passed in the 2023 legislature. Part of the Senate Bill 382, our new Land Use and Planning Act in the state of Montana, requires that municipalities calculate out the number of homes that we will need in a 20-year forecast. So we need to say, how many people do we think are living in our communities, and how many workers are living in our communities? How many people that have jobs need homes? We estimate that in Missoula, we are going to need anywhere from 25,000 to 40,000 more homes in the next 20 years. That calculates out in the next decade to 1,000 to 1,400 homes per year. We do believe that will be then an opportunity to catch up, and then from there forward, we're estimating anywhere from 900 to 1,000 homes per year. That's of every income level. The housing market is like an accordion. It is impacted. The higher housing prices are, the more intense it is for people at the lower end of the economic spectrum. And so you can imagine where we are in Montana with our housing prices soaring as they have, how difficult it is for people that are earning lower and moderate wages to make it work in our Montana communities. Missoula has addressed the regulatory issue, and it's very important that Montana communities do that. So we have passed a land use bill. Our city council just passed our new land use plan in December, and we are now moving forward with updating our development codes. The city of Missoula puts our money where our mouth is. We actually have taxpayer dollars that go into local projects, and so we have the public-private commitment. We are asking the state to join this equation. You've heard from many folks today that we need to be able to provide additional resources to create this affordable housing infrastructure. The last thing I'll say is that our local economic development agency, the Missoula Economic Partnership, created and worked with community partners from Missoula County to create our comprehensive economic development strategy. Attainable and affordable housing and childcare are the two most important functions for us to support workforce going forward. We are committed to continue doing this work, and we look forward to partnering with state resources to do that. Thank you for your consideration of this important bill, and thank you for your service to the state of Montana. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jay Reardon, R-E-A-R-D-O-N. I'm representing the Montana State Building and Construction Trades Council. That's the unions that represent workers in the construction and building industry. We stand in strong support of House Bill 21 and urge it to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ashley Martinez, M-A-R-T-I-N-E-Z. I represent the Montana Building Industry Association, and they represent 1,400 business members and a collective 26,000 employees statewide. Our association aims to build and provide attainable housing for Montanans by reducing unnecessary regulatory burdens that increase the cost of housing, developing workforce, and increasing access to water. And we stand in support of House Bill 21. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other proponents for House Bill 21 in the room? Other proponents? Seeing none. Do we have proponents online for House Bill 21?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Kelly Lynch.
Good morning, members of the committee. Our members are strong partners with
Ms.
our
Lynch.
local, I'm sorry,
Ms.
Kelly
Lynch.
Lynch.
Ms. Lynch, I think we need to turn the volume up a little bit somewhere.
How's that? Can you hear me?
That's a little bit better. I always tell people that don't underestimate the ineffectiveness of microphones. Stand close to them, and we want to hear what you have to say.
Great. Thank you, Chair. I am sitting on my computer, so hopefully this is as good as I can make it. It's Kelly Lynch, Lynch. I'm the Executive Director of the Montana League of Cities and Towns. I'm home with a sick kid today, so I apologize for not being there in person. I just wanted to stand in support of this bill. Our members are strong partners with our local housing organizations to help build and preserve these housing units to house our residents. We contribute our land, our tax increment financing, our grant funds, and other resources to help developers get these units built. This bill will help build more of them, and so we ask for a due pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Antoinette, do we have other proponents online?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Daniel Brooks.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks, you may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Tax Committee. My name is Dan Brooks, that's B-R-O-O-K-S, and I represent the Billings Chamber of Commerce. We rise in support of House Bill 21 this morning, echoing the comments of previous supporters. Housing supply is the #2 priority issue for our members and our business community. I'd also briefly just second some of the comments from a prior proponent in that we believe in a two-pronged approach to addressing housing. First, in reducing regulations, and we're very thankful for all the work the legislature accomplished last session. And second, incentivizing additional supply. Big strides were made last session, and this is another thoughtful step in the right direction. Chair and members, we encourage a due pass on House Bill 21 and thank the sponsor for carrying the bill. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Further proponents online?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Allison Corbin.
Ms. Corbin, you may proceed.
Good morning. My name is Allison Corbin, ALLISON I'm testifying today as the Executive Director of the Montana Economic Developers Association in support of House Bill 21. MEDA is a statewide association with over 200 members, primarily those who serve as boots on the ground, helping economies and businesses grow as economic developers, along with a number of those who support economic development like engineering firms, childcare, and community developers. We are in support of this bill for all the reasons we've heard before me, and also want to stress how workforce housing is a critical limiting factor in the ability of our businesses of all sizes and in all size communities to grow, to expand, and also to attract new investment in our state. I urge due pass on House Bill 21, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Corbin. Other proponents online?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have opponents for House Bill 21?